A very good afternoon to the viewers and welcome to the 1873 TV, your vision, your power. My name is Tinashe Mpasiri. This afternoon on the 1873 TV, the 1873 Network presents to you SMM special on acquisition. And what do I mean by SMM? I mean Shabane Mashaba Mines. So many narrations have been told as far as the acquisition of Shabane Mashaba Mines is concerned. And one of the narrations that have been told quite often is that the government of Zimbabwe gave Mutumwa Mawere a guarantee to acquire Shabane Mashaba Mines. This afternoon, I happen to be joined by Mutumwa Mawere himself, as well as Mushana Murefu. Mr. Mawere, good afternoon and welcome to the 1873 TV.
Good afternoon, Tinashe. Good afternoon to the viewers out there.
Mushana, a very good afternoon and welcome.
Very good afternoon to you too and your viewers.
Yes, it is indeed a wonderful day in Johannesburg, and here we have an issue that has been there for quite some time. It's been 13 years now since the government of Zimbabwe expropriated Shabane Mashaba Mines, and so many narrations have been told as far as the acquisition of Shabane Mashaba Mines is concerned, Mr. Mawere. And many people wonder, why is it that a company that employed 20,000 individuals at one point, and a company on which 100,000 livelihoods dependent is now on its knees? This afternoon, we're having a special discussion on how Shabane Mashaba Mines was actually acquired. It's so fortunate that we have you today to go with us through the story of how this mining giant was acquired.
Yeah, I think we can start maybe from a shared understanding in terms of what a company is, what SMM was, and who owned it before acquisition. The company was owned by a company called TNN PLC. And to make it easy, I think we have some of the documents that relate to the acquisition that we can be able to share with the viewers so that at least we have a starting point. And I don't know whether the technical guys can share the documents. Then I can go through the actual documents.
And for those also who have access to another device that they can access the documents, you can go to the FOSMM.org website, and under documents, go to document number 10. And from page 20 to page 27, those are the pages that we'll be looking at.
Okay, is it showing?
So whilst maybe they shuffle through that, perhaps you can give us just a summary so that people can perhaps understand what the contents are of those documents.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted to read to the documents and be able to do justice so that what I'm saying is backed by documentation. Unfortunately, on my page, I'm not seeing it. Okay. Let me just check. I'm not saying it, but essentially, the holding company of Shabane Mashaba Mines at the time was a company called, and is still called, SMM Holdings Limited. That company was in turn owned by TNN International. That was a subsidiary of TNN PLC. The agreement of acquisition was entered into between TNN on the one hand and Africa Resources Limited. And it involved the purchase of shares held in the UK company SMM Holdings. So at the Zimbabwean level, there was no change at all. The change occurred in the board of the parent company, SMM Holdings. The purchase price was $60 million, United States dollars, and the money was to be paid over a period of time, which is about 13 months from the date of the transfer of shares. So that was the transaction. It involved the transfer of rights, the right, title, and interest of SMM to Africa Resources Limited. That then
So at that point, was there any need, was there any government involvement?
There was no need for government involvement. The transaction took place in the United Kingdom. So there was no transfer of rights in the territory of Zimbabwe.
Was there any government, not government, but any legal precedence to have any government involvement during that transaction? Since
the government of Zimbabwe
the operations were in Zimbabwe?
Has jurisdiction over affairs of persons and property in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
So there was no involvement at all by the Zimbabwean government, either in terms of representation, warranties, or anything. It was purely a commercial transaction involving two private parties, one registered in the British Virgin Islands and another registered in the territory of the United Kingdom.
So just to be clear, Africa Resources Limited was registered in the British Virgin Islands.
That's right, and continues to be registered there.
Okay.
So that is the transaction. The documents obviously are available for those who care to use documents as a basis of argument. Unfortunately, there are people who base their arguments on fiction and sometimes imagination. And sometimes whatever they read in the newspapers, they take that to be fact. And then you have to respond to such facts. But as we go through the pages that Tinashe has spoken about, which is they appear on the website Friends of SMM, and under documents, I'm downloading my own documents so that I can refer to the. I think the numbering there is number 10 in the numerical. It says SMM annexures, and I go to paragraph. I think it's page what?
It's page 20.
Page 20, being okay. Page 17, 8, 19, 20. This was to give effect to the transaction. There was a meeting of directors held in Harare at Mercury House on the 15th of March, 1996. In attendance were Mr. Rakam, BJN Oliphant, MD Mawere, JP Mukushi, EI Manikai, and Mr. Rakam was appointed chairman at the meeting. The chairman reported that notice of the meeting had been given to all the directors in accordance with the company's articles of association, and that the meeting had been duly convened. Number 2, the meeting was called for the purpose of resigning the directors of the company. It was resolved that Mutumwa Mawere and Edwin Isaac Manikai be appointed directors of the company, and being present, they took their seats at the meeting, and that Mr. Mawere take the chair of the meeting. So I became the chairman of Shabane Mashaba Mines Private Limited, the Zimbabwean company, on the 15th of March, 1996. The resignation of Mr. J.P. Mkushi was produced to the meeting and accepted with immediate effect. Mr. J.P. Mkushi was appointed the director of the company, and being present took his seat at the meeting. They were produced the resignations of the other directors: J.D. Carter, Abner Bosch, D.G. Karathas, Lindsay Cook, Adrian Reckham, H.P. Mkushi, Tim Muswaka, H.J.N. Oliphant, A.C. Thompson, J.M. Pattison, and E.P. Warbeck as directors of the company. It was resolved that such resignations be accepted with immediate effect. This was not a company invasion. This was done in the normal course of business and in accordance with the Companies Act of Zimbabwe. There was produced to the meeting the resignation of African Associated Mines Private Limited as secretary of the company. It was resolved that such resignations be accepted and that Mr. Manikai be appointed secretary of the meeting. It was resolved that the registered office of the company remains the same. There was produced the resignation of KPMG as the auditors of the company, and it was resolved that KPMG be appointed auditors of the company on terms and at a remuneration to be agreed. Then there was a meeting on the 15th of March again, which is a meeting of shareholders, and the minutes of the extraordinary general meeting of the company shareholders took place at 12:55 on the same day at Beverly Court, Becker Avenue, 100 Becker Avenue. Present, Mawere as chairman, J.P. Mkushi as director, Manikai as director / secretary. The chairman advised the meeting that due notice had been given to members of the meeting to consider and if seen fit pass a resolution in terms of Section 58 of the Companies Act, Chapter 190. The chairman produced to the meeting for consideration a copy of the sale and purchase agreement between TN International, TN PLC, and African Resources Limited, dated 7th March 1996, the agreement. The chairman also produced to the meeting other ancillary documentation to the agreement, including the disclosure letter, the memorandum of deposit and charge, which is the security document, the tax deed, the technical services agreement. The chairman reported that working capital of the company of $25 million to $30 million was expected to be injected into the company shortly to underpin operations. The chairman produced the draft of the special resolution in terms of Section 58 aforesaid. The chairman proposed that in the light of the contents of paragraph 4 hereof, the company passed the special resolution on the basis that the trading position of the company would remain solid and viable. It was resolved that the company passed the special resolution in the form proposed. It was resolved that Messrs. Mawere, J.P. Mkushi sign and execute all documentation to give effect to the resolution. The secretary was then instructed to enter the minutes of the meeting into the company minutes file. There being no further business, the meeting was then terminated. Then the special resolution, which was referred to, was passed on the 15th day of March 1996, that the company hereby authorizes the rendering of financial assistance as contemplated in Section 58 of the Companies Act, Chapter 190, as amended, in respect of the sale and purchase of shares, as well as more fully appear from Clause 3 of the Agreement of Sale signed between TNN International Limited, TNN PLC, and Africa Resources Limited, dated 7th March 1996, a copy of which has been made available to the company. In particular, the company agrees to make available $60 million US dollars for the acquisition in monthly tranches of $5 million until payment in full of the purchase price of $60 million. And on the 18th March, the minutes of the extraordinary general meeting of a subsidiary company called Tenor Fiber Cement was also held. And resolutions were also passed to that effect. And on the 29th of April, the resolution was passed for the company to borrow money in the following terms: Heritage Investment Bank. You see the agreement on the first page of this bundle of documents, and $30 million from Heritage, which is now ABC Bank, $10 million from Universal Merchant Bank, where Honorable Chafika was a director and shareholder. So this essentially addresses the issue of how the acquisition was done. And you'll appreciate there was no representative of the government of Zimbabwe. And I participated not as an agent, but as a principal of the company.
So this notion, okay, this idea that the government gave you a guarantee, where did that come from? I know you've heard it over and over again, the government, but what are they referring to? Was there anything that the government did during that period, or in the periods after that?
First I think we deal with the acquisition so that we exercise any demonic thinking or imagination, so that we pack it. Then we say, now the company has been acquired, the seller and buyer are at one, and the transaction takes place between two consenting parties, and there are no facts that support the involvement of the government of Zimbabwe. If those facts exist, then there is an opportunity to expose such facts, because I can't create facts. So I think then we deal with that issue as a factual issue, so that we bury it. Then, because if we mix too many things, then we are going post-acquisition. First, we are saying the car belonged to Mshana Mrefu, and the car, the papers, the title to the car was transferred to another party on a willing buyer, willing seller basis.
Yes.
Yeah, so if we accept that, then at least we can then deal with that issue. Because if the facts exist, then it can't be retrospective.
No, I think from what you have shown there, it is quite clear. I mean, on my end, I've got the privilege to have actually had a read through some of those documents, and I'm quite aware to some extent of the issues involved in SMM. What I think is important to address here is where this idea of government guarantee is coming.
No, I think
Because
we
I
can.
think if that separation is not made, like you have rightfully said now, that we need to look at posts and
I think obviously there must be someone maybe acting on behalf of the government of Zimbabwe who can say that, and then the onus is on them to prove. I can't prove the alternative, which doesn't exist, because I don't have facts supporting that alternative. The only
You see, what I'm trying to get at here, Mr. Mawere, is this: you have a car, and you manage to buy that car, and you pay fully for that car, right? And then once the car belongs to you, you then run into problems, financial problems, right? And then you come to me to borrow money, and you use your car as a guarantee.
No, I'm saying this: if those facts...
No, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say here is, you can now easily see how someone can twist that to appear as if, or to make it as if the guarantor was based on the fact that you were given to buy the car, but yet no. This might have been an event that happened afterwards. So my question to you really is, was there any such guarantee ever between your organization and
I'm saying is the first, I would then explain so that for the viewers, you have more information than many other would be, so that we deal with the acquisition and contain it. Because what you are saying is, if I end up with tires that are missing, and I want to drive the car, then I go to someone and borrow. I can't pledge the security. I can't pledge that car anyway, because it's already pledged to the seller anyway. So it has nothing to do with acquisition. The facts of that event will stand on their own. They cannot be mixed with another facts that occurred prior to. So I think if we do sequential, so that I can then bring the documents as we go along. So the first phase, which is today, was to deal with this issue, so that we deal with the acquisition only. And then we can then water the appetite for people who have questions. But I do know that, and the documents are available, that I think you have some of the documents.
Absolutely, I do have some of the documents.
Can you share them?
And they can be shared. The documents, actually, another easier way of accessing the documents, if you go on YouTube and Google SMM Acquisition, you'll be able also to get the documents. And the rest of the documents, you can also access them from FOSMM.org.
Okay, so let's go to FOSM.org, so that we can deal with this, so that we tell the people, because sometimes, as Professor Mtambara has alluded to, that we don't have a culture of reading and writing. So even though the documents may be there, you actually need to pinpoint, because people can develop their own facts unless you show them the documents. What number?
Okay, just quickly.
So is Matiza online?
Matiza is trying to connect on Skype. If you can add him to the Skype group call.
You got him?
Let me just quickly share with the documents that I have.
So, Mshana, you can bear with us so that we have what?
Yeah.
We have
That's
we are right now in March of 1996. So we can then deal with it. Okay. And you
So
have heard,
perhaps
I think Honorable Joao and Chinamasa in Parliament also made some utterances regarding the acquisition.
Okay, Leroy, you can share the documents on that screen. The second document.
And on my side,
Okay.
you can. Will you send a WhatsApp?
Yes, I can easily share with them on WhatsApp as well, so that you can access them quickly.
We got it. You have already shared on your side.
It's up on the screen. So the first one that he has shared with is the Memorandum of Deposit and Charge. It's the Share Sale Purchase Agreement.
Mshana, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So that is the agreement. You note from the agreement that there is no reference at all to any government of Zimbabwe involvement.
Yes.
Yeah?
That is correct.
That is correct.
So yes, these documents are clear. They show that there is no involvement of the government during the purchase of the company.
Yeah. So the next document
Is the Memorandum of Deposit and Charge.
is called the MDC, but not the political party.
Close enough.
Yeah, it's called a Memorandum of Deposit and Charge. And Mshana, you know what that refers to?
If you can enlighten everybody.
Yeah,
including myself.
that's a security document that if
That seals the deal.
if ARL fails to pay, it
What
sets
happens?
out what would happen.
Yes.
Yeah, and the shares were used as security, and there are people who say Mawere didn't pay anything without knowing what payment is and what a transaction of this nature entailed. So there is a memorandum, and you see that it is between Africa Resources and Limited, Africa Construction Limited, the companies who are the subject companies that were acquired, TNN PLC, and it means.
So coming to that question, the point you have raised,
Yeah,
for people like myself and many others,
yeah.
would we be way off to think that the company paid for itself?
That's why you had a resolution called financial assist. It doesn't mean the company can pay itself because the company has no legs to pay.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that if you are looking at it from a layman's point of view.
A layman's point of view would be a mortgage. and then someone then says, I bought a house, but the house paid for itself. Would you not think that is absurd?
So in giving the example of a mortgage, what we are talking about is somebody who borrows money from the bank and is told that this house is worth this much, but the house belongs to them. But instead of moving into the property, they might decide to then build some structures in that property, and then be able to pay off the bank with an increase of rent that they are charging people who are in that property. Am I right?
Yeah. If you take the house, I find a house, I like the house, I go to the seller and make an offer to purchase. After I make an offer to purchase, the offer may be accepted, may be rejected. Once it's accepted, we enter into an agreement of sale.
Yes.
Then I now have the right to take title, but subject to me being able to pay for it. Then I go to my bank and borrow. The bank may give me 100% or 80% or 90% of the purchase price.
Yes.
Then I will then pay living in the house.
Yes.
If I default on payment, it is the bank now that has recourse. I can also do the same with the seller. I enter into an agreement that you call a deed of sale.
So despite the fact that, so in this case, if you then go to the same bank that is owned by the company, that makes no difference, does it?
No, the purchase is complete. I have to buy first before I can give you security. You say I can't go to the bank and give it title that I don't have. But the bank has to pay subject to the bond being registered. But the
So in other words, you are saying you paid money first.
That's right.
Okay. That's fine. So that is the one thing that is not clear to people, including myself. It was not also clear to myself.
But to finance the acquisition, I got a loan from the seller, which was like a deed of sale, which then has to be paid.
That's the point I was saying, that you are getting it from the same. So, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it is like the owner of a property sells the property to me, but says you pay over time and on agreed terms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have Marcy Wilkes, who's watching from the 1873 FM Facebook page. She states, in terms of acquisition, what are the non-facts that you want to dispel? Because I suppose the issue with the lay viewer isn't the sequence of events, but whether the Republic of Zimbabwe at any point had claims to SMM. If they did, at what point was that?
That's what I'm saying is, if the government had claims, they didn't need to pass a law. The claims would be self-evident. If you have a claim on me, it's like a bank proceeding to pass a law in its favor when that is not necessary. Because a banker who has given me money relies on the same law that existed at the time the loan was advanced. So it's just a common rules of commerce, and the Constitution anyway provides a clear guideline as to how a debtor and creditor ought to be treated in terms of the law. I can't have a debtor who gets high-heeled shoes or a creditor who gets high-heeled shoes. That suits them. So they say, I'm taller now. But when I gave you money, I didn't have high-heeled shoes. And the change of status is by an act of state, not by a commercial market consideration. Because if indeed the government was a creditor and it was owed money, then any creditor ought to have been protected in terms of the laws that apply to everybody. I can't have a law for the government as a creditor and a law for Mercy as a creditor. It's the same law, it's the same country.
I hope that, Mercy, you are answered. She went on further to ask a loan from the seller.
What?
She went on further to ask
a loan like the
from
home,
the seller.
Yeah, a loan like a homeowner. He says, I'm selling you to a house for 1 million. It's like a car. I can also do the same. Higher purchase. I'm using the car while I'm paying off. So the seller is the one who needs to be paid.
Exactly.
Instead of me paying with my own money, I go to the bank. But if the seller agrees to sell to me on agreed terms, then I have an obligation to pay. And if I fail to pay, then what you were talking about, the memorandum of deposit and charge, it's under paragraph D. It says, pursuant to the terms of the agreement, ARL has agreed to secure its secured obligations in accordance with the terms of the memorandum of deposit and charge, not in accordance to any other variation or reconstruction act, which didn't exist at the time. So I hope that addresses that issue, so that we have a common understanding of facts. But if we keep creating new facts, then we can't deal with that issue. When title passes hands and you vacate a property, there must be something that has taken place. Either the seller is satisfied,
Yes.
and the buyer is satisfied as to the price and the terms thereof.
And all the individuals are at an agreement, basically.
That's right. You can't have a third party now who ambushes a transaction.
Yeah. So this is clear now. I mean, we are all clear that the transaction was between yourself through ARL and TNN in the United Kingdom. And you have just explained to us how that was done. Now, my interest really is to try and address this government guarantee issue.
No, I'm saying is if we have that that understanding, then we are saying, look, because of the programming, we first finish and exhaust all the papers surrounding what?
The acquisition.
The acquisition, the letters from
Right.
TNN, so that we assist other people who may have a different factual perspective, so that they can bring those facts. And we deal with matters in a sequential basis, so that we don't confuse anybody. So I think, is there still other papers that the TNN letters you got?
The T and N letters.
Yeah. So that people can then understand. There are people who believe that I was in Zimbabwe, I was chased away from Zimbabwe, and the transaction was done in some other jurisdiction, so that I think the facts can then speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
You got it?
Let me just quickly access them and be able to share them quickly. So basically what I'm going to share with is firstly, it was who are the parties,
It was actually letters that would demonstrate this whole issue. But if there is, I think any question on the acquisition, Mushana, that can help other people. I know you have more knowledge.
Well, I mean, it's quite clear what I mean. You have shown the documents and you've told people where to find those documents, and the explanation you have given is quite clear that the transaction was between two parties that did not involve the government.
Yeah.
So by now, we should be clear that.
In fact, there is a
no
letter. There is a letter on page 92. No. There is. There's just you got it.
There's a letter that I have dated the 28th of February, 1997.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Pertaining to the visit to Harare.
Yeah. So let's read that letter so that we can also deal with the documents. Have you sent it to me?
Okay, let me just send it to you, the format in which it is. So if you are tuned in at this very moment and you are wondering what the conversation is on, it's basically on a clarification as far as the acquisition of Shabane Mashaba Mines is concerned. We have shared with you earlier documents pertaining to this acquisition, and this you can be able to access on the 1873 FM Facebook Live page. If you do have any questions pertaining to the acquisition, if something that is not clear to you, please do not hesitate to actually send through your questions or even your comments pertaining to this whole acquisition if you have come to understand how the acquisition was done. Your contributions are very valuable to these conversations as far as building the Africa that we all want, in Africa that there is respect of rule of law and regard of property rights. It's always important to engage in constructive conversations that enable us to better understand issues, especially where the narratives or the notions have been fabricated, like in the instance of the acquisition of Shabane Mashaba Mines.
You got it?
Yes, I do have the letter with me. Just trying to send it to you so that you can also be able to have access to it. Okay, perfect.
Okay. You got it, Leroy?
Okay, Leroy, I've sent it to the letter to you. You can be able to put it up. And Mr. Mawere, I've also forwarded the letter to you so that we can all have access to it.
Okay. Yeah, the letter was 28th, dated 28th February 1997. It was addressed to M. Mawere from TNPOC in Manchester, Africa Resources Limited, PO Box 3343, Rivonia 2128, Gauteng, South Africa. So it tells you that even as at 28th February 1997, I was a resident of South Africa. And there is a notion that I ran away from Zimbabwe. And yet the letter says otherwise. My visit to Harare, dear Mutumwa, my visit to Harare last Thursday to see the Vice President, who was then Vice President Muzenda, the late, was as interesting as it was brief. We were certainly received in a friendly and courteous fashion. I hope the points made were as well received as they seem to have been. I attached a copy of my letter to the Vice President. TNN entered into an arm's length commercial deal which we are anxious to complete. There seemed to be no political involvement at the time, and TNN would be very disturbed if this arose now. The slowness of the payment is embarrassing for TNN in presenting our results and in planning our financial affairs. The placing of 40% of the equity of the construction business seems a viable way of raising most of the cash shortfall. It would be unfortunate if the process was obstructed in some way. So yours, David Karathas. And if you go back to the bottom, the same letter was addressed to the then Vice President. So I can't produce any other facts which would tie Mnangagwa to this. Although people have presumed that he was involved in the acquisition. But this is a letter from the seller to me and also to the government of Zimbabwe. That letter was not copied to anyone to confirm this patronage or proxy version that seems to satisfy the people who have their own political lenses that they may wish to wear.
Is that common practice that the seller of a company copies a letter to the government?
No, I'm saying they had visited the country. And they were talking to the government because at the time there was already some confusion, people wanting to make this an indigenization project. And assume that there was no seller. So the sellers went there, and at the time, the seller had to go and kill these so-called rumors, because the rumors had already started filtering into the market. There's no talk of a government guarantee. There's talk of 40% of the construction business being floated on the stock exchange. There's nothing talking about the government having supported the acquisition. All that is being talked about, it was arm's length. Take your arm there. It was not a sweetheart deal involving any third party. So if there was a deal of the nature that Joao or Chinamaza misrepresented as they wish to score any political points that they may have had in their minds, those facts are not there. And there's no evidence to support those facts. So I can't assist Chinamasa or Joao to give life to their serving versions. But what we can deal with is the letter. And you can see the letter, Mushana.
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, so I think unless somebody can produce another letter, then that would then help. But until then, we have to rely on the facts that are known to us. And those facts are what they are. So, do you think, on that note, I think our show is ending at past, so that our job today was just to give the facts and be able to deal with this April and March of 1996. What were the facts? And allow the facts to do the talking. And if there's a government guarantee involved, so be it. But we can't give a guarantee some legal facts or legal legs so that we can take these facts to a destination that we wish to go. So we will follow up this tomorrow with another show that will deal with this issue of the misrepresentations. We look at what Chinamasa said in Parliament. We also look at what Patrick Joao said when he sought to create a new term in the dictionary called, is it
speculative political
entrepreneur, whatever, SPE. And we see what kind of mind informed that construction. So, Mr. Mshana, any concluding remarks on the part one?
No, I think it was very clear, and I hope we can touch on the other subjects surrounding this mystery.
Yeah, and would you be interested in knowing who has made these representations?
Well, I suppose it's going to be coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, because if somebody is saying the acquisition was facilitated or Mawere ran away from Zimbabwe, surely the letters would have been as early as in 1997, which is 20 years ago. Surely, for 20 years, somebody should have come up with another address where I was living, where I received mail. If the seller...
More importantly, what were you running from? What did they say you were running from?
Oh, they said I was external, but I had externalized. So I don't know if that's what...
20 years ago, there wasn't externalization.
No, 20 years ago. No, they're saying that in 2004, Mawere is a fugitive of justice. He ran away from Zimbabwe. But they don't find the house I ran away from. They only find the house I ran away to. Which means I was a virtual person in Zimbabwe.
Right.
Yeah. But only sick people can create that vision. But in life, I've learned that when someone is sick, just use the facts as legs, because they will take you somewhere.
You don't chase them. You don't go after them.
No, it's a futile exercise. Because we still come to the end where we are not moving anywhere. So on that note, I think we are somewhere. So we can, Tinashe, unless you want to say something.
Well, I just want to share what Marcy Wilkes has just reiterated. She states that the Africa we want is this kind of Africa where access to facts is afforded to us and transparency in terms of what makes up the facts. And just in closing, I think this is a very important case study, especially to me, and primarily because I was one individual who was promoting investments in Zimbabwe, and one such area I was promoting investments was the gold mining sector. And really, I was very much ignorant as far as the circumstances of Shabane Mashaba Mines. It now makes sense why that most investors are shunning away from investing in Zimbabwe, especially when it comes to the mining sector. Yet there is so much that is said about mineral resources being available in Zimbabwe. To individuals out there who are ignorant about the rule of law, who are ignorant about property rights, take time and invest in literacy when it comes to property rights, when it comes to also the rule of law. It plays a fundamental role as far as investment is concerned. Many times we talk about unemployment, we talk about inequality, we also talk about poverty, yet we do not talk about employment, we don't talk about wealth, we don't talk about equality. It is such case studies that can enable us to understand how, as individuals, we can be able to create employment, we can be able to address the aspect of equality, and also, more importantly, the aspect of employment creation and wealth accumulation. So tomorrow, be sure to join us again on the 1873 TV as we bring to you a part 2 of the SMM special on its acquisition. I must say thank you to Mr. Mawere for taking time to share with us these facts of SMM. Many times we wonder, as individuals who grew up knowing this big mining company, this big mining house, as one of the biggest employers in Zimbabwe, and we wonder, why is it that today there are no jobs in Zimbabwe? Why is it that today there is so many people are living in abject poverty? And the answers are coming to light. And each and every time I happen to be on a show that has to do with such issues, I get better informed, and I can also make better informed decisions the next time I go and place an X on a ballot paper in that ballot booth. I know what exactly I'll be voting for. So that's it from me, Tinashe Mpasiri. Mushana Murefu, thank you so much for also joining us. Mr. Mawere, thank you once again. The crew behind the scenes, Leroy as well as Fred, thank you for making this program a success. Listeners and viewers, join us again tomorrow, same time on the 1873 FM as well as Zimbabwe Today. Goodbye.